You could just walk us through your glorious history. What brought you into senior care?
I started in hospitality. I think I moved out when I was 17 years old on my own. And so I just started to work with a bunch of really brilliant individuals, worked my way up to eventually opening a small luxury inn in Concord, New Hampshire. When I was about 27 or 28, lived in the US for a couple of years, came back, stayed in the hospitality side of things as a director of food and beverage at a couple of luxury resorts. And then I moved into consulting. I had an individual, a mentor of mine who said, Jay, I've got a really good opportunity. We need to build a conference and event center in Chatham, Ontario. So I helped the municipality and my colleague for about 5 years in the complete development RFP, the capital outfit for a 165,000 square foot conference and event center. And then I had another individual who I had worked with before, and he said to me, Jay, you got to come, you got to work in senior living. I started working for Amica, which is one of the premier luxury senior living provider in North America. And I worked with them for about 11 years. And the first couple of years, I realized why people become doctors and nurses, like why people pursue professions or careers that help others. There's an intrinsic value. If you think about it, there's like how many hundreds of thousands of people work as like PSWs or nursing aides. They're not in it for the money. You're not making very much money. And it's hard work, like especially if you're in long-term care or assisted living, not to mention the whole emotional side.
And I think in your consulting role where you're basically hand-holding families in terms of finding the right choices for them, it's almost another level. Tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, it's difficult, especially when you're outside of the business, to know what to look for because you don't have any experience in it. And there's a whole lot of terms and lingo and, you're not sure what it is you got to look for. And it's not cheap. It's very expensive as well, or can be. So, part of what I provide for families is just that the fact that I've been there and I've gone through that particular process thousands of times with thousands of families to help them sort of navigate and what to look for when you're looking at a retirement community, because living in a retirement community, it's not on your bucket list. Chatty, I don't think you woke up this morning thinking about, I can't wait until I move into a retirement community. Nobody thinks that way. So when you actually come to the process where you're going through the journey and you have to find a place, maybe a loved one has passed away and you have another loved one who's now on their own, and you want to make sure that they have that sort of emotional or congregate living support, some assistance on their day-to-day activities and living. You have no idea what to look for, and that's part of where I come in. Chatty, let's say you're looking for your uncle. Here's the 3 things that I would do. Number 1 is talk to the general manager or the executive director. So ask them just for like 10 minutes of their time. You want to get to know them as an individual, because the general manager or the executive director sets the tone and the tenor for the entire building. Doesn't matter whether it's for-profit or not for-profit. Doesn't matter if it's the name on the rock out front or how nice the swimming pool is. All that stuff is irrelevant. It's all about the leader and the individual who's leading that team. Because that individual makes sure that when there's conflict, they lean in to mitigate it. They lean in and make sure that the residents are always having a better value to their experience, what they pay for. And they hire like-minded people. You want to ask the general manager, what have they done to improve the quality of life for the residents in the past year? And what do they have planned in the future? What are they most proud of as an accomplishment as an executive director? Like, you want them to say they've improved services, or they've expanded the hours of the bistro, or they've added an extra nursing shift, or they built a bocce court, or any of that kind of stuff. You're looking for specifics. Maybe you could call it like a BS meter. When you meet somebody and you like them and you feel that's what you're looking for when you talk with a GM. Number 2 is you want to know what they do to protect both the vulnerable as well as the valuables. And you want to focus on the overnight shift. So we would all love it if emergencies happened during the day when the entire team is around. But you and I both know that's not how life goes. And that's not how, unfortunately, some tragedies that have occurred in within the last 6 months, it always occurs on the overnight shift. And the reason why you want a nurse on shift, on site on the overnight is that they're accustomed to dealing with emergencies. So they're used to the pressure. You have somebody who knows how to react in that type of a pressure cooker situation. And then the third thing was probably our favorite topic, and that would be food, right? Everybody loves to talk about the food and how great the food is. And you probably hear that during your tour, which is great. So you usually get like a free lunch. So you go in and the GM will come over and see how things are, right? But you've got that perfect table. The chef is cooking you the food. Everything is all clean and immaculate. The Sunday night when the part-time cook is on, when there's no managers around, when you probably have the part-time server on, that is probably a real representation of what the dining experience is going to be like.
And you went from the GM basically defining the culture of the place, going to saying that do they have the right clinical capabilities to handle it, and finally what the day-to-day is generally going to look like, sort of. Is this the same across geographies?
I mean, from a geography perspective, it's the same. You've got, urban centers that aren't very good at what they do, and rural centers without a lot of amenities that do a fantastic job, and vice versa. That's just sort of the nature of the business of any business. The one piece I think I noticed when you take Canada and the US, having worked in both markets, in Canada, the great thing about the healthcare ecosystem is that it doesn't cost you anything. The vast majority of process and procedure are looked after. You pay a little bit maybe for drugs, but most employers have a great drug plan as well, a little bit of a copay. But other than that, if you've got an issue with, a blocked tear duct or, your knees bugging you, you can get all of that looked after without it costing you anything. The big difference, though, is that in Canada, it takes forever and a day to get through that process.
The children or the caregivers don't really understand the complexity of their parents' issue or their loved ones' issues. They don't know where they need to take them. I've heard this repeatedly that that one of the big problems is that the elders haven't planned about how they will age. Now, tell me a little bit about that journey.
It's really tough. We all know that we're going to age, and we all know that it's going to come with associated issues. If you think about your own age, so I'm 56 years of age, but I don't feel 56, Chatty. I feel like maybe I'm in my early 50s, I'm in relatively good shape. But the reality is I'm 56. Nobody thinks they're as old as they are. There's a cognitive dissonance between them. And nobody really wants to think about aging. It's not necessarily associated with amazing outcomes. Like that's something I'll worry about later. But the one piece of advice that I try to give, and I would give here for people who have aging loved ones, is around a change in behavior. So there's a lot of families who try to ignore the fact that mom or dad need more help. It's probably just a one-off that they forgot to take their pills, or it's probably just a one-off that they've been stumbling a little bit. The piece I would sort of bring back for the families is that a change in behavior means a change in condition. So let's say, Chatty, you have an uncle who loves to go to a coffee shop, and he's on his own. He's in his 70s, his late 70s, and every Tuesday he goes and he meets with, some other guys, and they shoot the breeze. And then you find out he stopped going to the coffee shop. And you ask him, why are you not going to the coffee shop? You love these people, like you're with them all the time. So they tell the same stories all the time, or, I just didn't feel like going. But what's probably happened is there's been a change in conditions. So maybe your uncle is forgetting how to get to the coffee shop. Maybe he's forgetting it, or maybe he's in conversation and he's forgetting words. So then it becomes an embarrassment. And so they don't go, right? Because they feel embarrassed about it. And as a family, again, that change in behavior means there's a change in condition. That's when you need to be proactive. We need to help your uncle, in this case, or a family member has to help because they need that extra support.
How do you handle that? Let's figure out what has to be done rather than actually understanding if there's an underlying reason or a condition thing.
It's really hard, Chatty, because if you think about it, even for yourself, that if you've noticed some behavior changes, right? They're your loved ones. You care for them. You don't want to think of them as aging or failing in any way. It's a natural reaction. And for your uncle, it's the same. They don't want to deal with it either. It's just to be proactive around fall mitigate.
What would you suggest families do earlier rather than later? Like you see a change in behavior, you know something's happening, your antenna should kind of go up and you start taking some of these more preventive steps in their life as such, right? Is there something else you would suggest? What are the taboo topics that don't get discussed around elder care?
You know, especially when it comes to acuity and dementia, it's really tough. People who have Alzheimer's and they see things that don't exist, and you can't get into a conversation where you're saying that doesn't occur or that's not a conversation you want to engage in. So I would be a bit more proactive with the safety measures that you can implement or the helpful measures you can implement for a family. So taking pills. If you're on certain pills, you need to take them at a certain time. Maybe he's forgetting to take his pills. So you buy him something that has an alarm, and then the alarm cues him to come and take his pills. So there can be smaller things that you can do to help your loved one out that helps support them.
And Jay, does the let's try out the retirement home actually work? Is that something that everybody does, like go in for a week, 2 weeks, and then sort of figure out?
Yeah, I mean, not all families do it, but from a sales perspective, most of them use that because, as mentioned before, you don't aspire to senior living, right? You're not growing up. I can't wait till I give up my independence and move into a senior living community. You're not thinking that way. The trial stay is one way to say, hey, come for a couple of weeks, stay for a couple of weeks. If the home is good, they're matching them up with similar like-minded residents to chat with them, to show them it's really not so bad. You get your meals and there's good programming and you have a support and we have a lot of fun with the staff and the food. And then, so for a couple of weeks, and then they go home. And if they're on their own, right, then you're not getting that social, emotional interaction. You're not getting that nourishment. And sometimes that helps to bring people back again because they start to make relationships with others.
So there is the healthcare side of it. So tell me about your views on this. Like, how far is the emotional and spiritual nourishment kind of part of the retirement community sale, if I might use the word, versus just saying, hey, there are folks over here who can take care of you.
There's a little bit of there's a clinical side to living in a retirement community. As individuals, some seniors would prefer to just stay at home by themselves. One is because they're afraid of the unknown. And second is senior living at times has an image problem. And there's not the best image from previous decades about what congregate living is all about. But I can tell you with certainty, there is life and laughter and love that can be found in congregate living. And, as much as the clinical side is important, you're moving in with like-minded individuals with similar past experiences. Why do people get together and hang out at the coffee shop? Well, the reason why is that we need emotional nourishment, and you get that from other people. We're all a part of community. Whether that's Facebook groups and Star Wars groups or volunteer groups, and they do it because it makes them feel good, but they also do it with other people, which helps to make it feel good. Like-minded seniors who have similar experiences. So why would you want to be at home by yourself when you could be in an environment where you're sharing and you're learning all about whatever topic it is that you're really interested in? You can find that in congregate senior living, and you get to spend it with others who feel the same way and can actually relate to you, right, in your age, as opposed to somebody in their 50s who can't relate. They just don't have the same life experiences.
And Jay, do seniors get this? Like, do they appreciate this part about congregate senior living?
I think some do because they get lonely, and families recognize that loneliness is a killer. We saw it throughout COVID, lockdowns, seniors locked in their room, just a terrible outcome. I think retirement communities themselves can do a much better job of what they do from a programming perspective to show that interaction between residents and team members and doing fun things and helping seniors grow and learn.